It's funny when you put something in your head, like languages, then suddenly, tung, 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 the whole subject opens
Everything
up.
connects up, yeah.
And then you forget about it and it all
Everything
disappears.
connects up.
I fell asleep at the wheel, driving, broke my collarbone about a month ago.
Oh my God.
And now I've learned that everybody falls asleep at the wheel. I never knew anybody fall asleep at the wheel.
But
People
why
do it
did you,
all the
what
time.
was the problem? No
Coming
sleep
up from
for a long
Denver,
time?
just
Or
tired and stupid. You know, a bully, oh, get home tonight.
hadn't been drinking?
No, not a bit, just tired.
Just tired, just not
Driving
enough
into
sleep.
the sun.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, go!
Go, what's 11?
Huh? 11 is on beer.
On beer.
On is 10.
Well, we do have a kind of a formal bunch of things that we might touch on. Who are you?
Nick DeWolf.
Are you, by any chance, Murray Gell-Mann?
Oh, that's right. I'm sorry.
You
I made a
forgot.
mistake. Yes, I thought I was Nick DeWolf. Every once in a while, I have this delusion that I'm Nick
You
DeWolf.
can play my part easily, but I can never play yours.
No, I'm only Murray Gell-Mann.
And
But I aspire to being Nick DeWolf.
God, poor guy. Well, all you need is the height.
Oh, yes.
And we can arrange that easily, just a little genetic
I see.
manipulation. And you're a physicist, indeed, but what kind of a physicist? 'Cause some
Oh,
people
well,
don't know.
I spend a lot of time being a theoretical elementary particle physicist. Now I'm a dilettante. I'm still a theorist, but I'm now a theoretical dilettante.
And you're now involved with stuff that gets involved, complexity.
Well, simplicity and complexity, and the interplay between simplicity and complexity, between law and chance, between regularity and randomness.
Do they meet like at the end of a circle, simplicity and complexity?
No.
They stay apart.
Yes.
Thank goodness. And when did you first come to the center?
Well, I didn't come actually to the center the first time I became familiar with the center, which was then called the Physics Division of the Aspen Institute. As a professor at Caltech, I had heard, of course, of Mike Cohen, whom I knew, and George Stranahan, whom I didn't know, who had been respectively a graduate student and an undergraduate at Caltech, founding a physics center of some kind somewhere in Colorado, and a convenient place for Mike to climb and so on. I had heard about that. I knew Mike quite well because he was still a graduate student when I arrived at Caltech. And then he was a postdoc for a little while before he became a faculty member at, I think, the University of Pennsylvania. I didn't know George, but I'd heard about him. And, but I hadn't thought of actually coming and working at this physics division of the Aspen Institute. I also received an invitation from Bob Craig, whom I didn't know at that time, but who signed the letter as the president of the Aspen Institute, inviting me to be a resource person for one of the Institute's seminars. And I didn't do that either. So in the early 60s, I missed an opportunity to visit the Aspen Institute, and I missed several opportunities to come to the Physics Center, which was then the physics division of the Aspen Institute. In 1964, I finally showed up in Aspen, but it was neither at the Institute nor at the center, although I visited both. It was a study, 2 weeks, very highly classified study, sponsored by the Arms Control and Disarmament Agency, which is loosely, or was loosely associated with the State Department. I think now it's under pressure from certain senators. It's been more tightly incorporated into the State Department. Anyway, I was invited to that meeting because I had familiarized myself with the arguments involved in deploying active anti-missile defense, active anti-ballistic missile defense. I thought
before
it was
Star Wars.
Oh yeah, Star Wars was a revival of something which we thought we had gotten rid of many years earlier.
Yeah.
And my colleagues and I believed that this was a very destabilizing move whether for the United States or for the Soviet Union, that in either case it was a destabilizing move, that it would cause greatly decreased crisis stability and also greatly increased instability of the arms competition, and would not protect the cities in the end, would simply raise the ante and for attacking them and destabilize the so-called Cold War. Anyway, I presented these arguments at the meeting.
Wasn't that view quite unpopular?
Well, it was getting more popular in 1964. And even in the Soviet Union, it was becoming familiar, at least. Jack Ruina, who had just been head of ARPA, and Carl Kazin, who had just been McGeorge Bundy's deputy, the deputy assistant to the president for national security, and I, the three of us, presented at a Pugwash meeting in India that year these ideas. And the Soviet delegation laughed at the ideas. But in the summer, the same summer that I came to Aspen, I was in Russia for a physics meeting. And the man who had been the most vociferous in denouncing our ideas a few months earlier, Milyonchikov of the All-Union Academy of Sciences, came out to Dubna, where I was, and found me in the cafeteria. He kept walking through the cafeteria, looking and looking and looking until he found me. I was very surprised to see him because he had nothing to do with this high-energy physics meeting. But he came, found me in the cafeteria, sat down next to me and said, "You remember the talk you gave back in February in India?" I said, "Yes." He said, "You remember that my colleagues and I said it was really stupid?" I said, "Yes." He said, "Well, it isn't so stupid." He got up and went back to Moscow.
Isn't that fabulous? Oh, that's wonderful.
So even there, these ideas were becoming at least familiar and to some extent accepted.
But isn't that kind of scene very unusual?
It was peculiar.
Very.
Yes. There were many more stories I could tell about that. I've written them in various places. But anyway, here in Aspen, there were several people who had this point of view, and of course many who didn't. And it was a very interesting meeting. We discussed a lot of other things. As I say, I was invited because that was a subject I knew something about, but we discussed the future of Germany, which was, of course, still divided into West and East, and lots of other matters. It was held out at the Four Seasons, which is now the music school. And there were guards everywhere in the woods and along the stream and so on. And
like
so
we
on.
just went through.
But we were assigned a rented house, which still exists, 518 Smuggler, 518 West Smuggler. It was the house of a psychoanalyst, I believe, the summer house of a psychoanalyst, or the vacation house, I should say, of a psychoanalyst. There's a bigger addition built onto it now, but it's still there. And I used to walk out to the Four Seasons up Castle Creek with some CIA person or some general or some diplomat or something like that. It was very interesting. And walk back later after the meetings. But I got interested in the physicists, of course, and came over to the Physics Center, or the Physics Division of the Aspen Institute, which had just what we now call Stranahan as its building, and had not more than 2 people to an office, maybe only 1. So somewhere between 18 and 36 participants. I think it was closer to 18 than to 36. And the walks were in common. That is, the whole physics division with family walked together, or at least big chunks walked together. There was a physics division hike. The members and the wives and children.
Sort of mandatory. If you didn't feel like it, you still had to do it.
No, I wouldn't say that.
Yeah,
but maybe it broke up into 2 sometimes. But it was the sort of mass walk, and it was a lot of fun because one knew all or most of the people. And I remember we went up. We joined. My wife and I joined it, and the older child, the younger child stayed with the babysitter. The younger child celebrated his first birthday here around the time of the fireworks. He was born on July 6th, so he celebrated. He saw the fireworks, and 2 days later celebrated his birthday, first birthday. But anyway, my first wife and I and my older child, daughter, went on the walks, and it was wonderful. We enjoyed them immensely. On one, we went to West Maroon and saw the glacier lilies, because it was early in the summer. Coming in was quite interesting. We flew in from Denver on a 6-passenger plane. The 4 of us, that is my first wife and I, our 2 children, and the babysitter, and a flatulent beagle. But that's just 5 people. The 6th person was the chancellor of the State University of New York. I think his name was Sam Gould, and he was the moderator of the Aspen Institute seminar. And I think he was quite relieved when the flight was over.
Because of the beagle.
Mainly because of the flatulent beagle, yes. The beagle was terrified. Just her feet were splayed out on the floor of this little plane. Anyway, we also visited the Aspen Institute. The whole disarmament study, the whole arms control study, visited the Aspen Institute. No, visited the Aspen Institute, and had a session with the members of the executive seminar that was in progress at that moment. And that was rather peculiar, because here were all these businessmen plus one labor leader, as usual. The labor leader gets a scholarship, right? The businessman has to pay. Right. We sat down with them and told them what we had been discussing. And these businessmen were, of course, on holiday from their business lives and from their business personae.
Right. So
they espoused the most uncharacteristic points of view, which they would never have espoused at all. A couple of them got up and said, why don't we just disarm? Why do we bother with all this? Why don't we just set a good example to the Soviet Union and disarm?
While they were dressed in a Roman toga at one point during the whole thing, which
well, they were dressed in some Greek, ancient Greek costume, conceptually. So they left all their ideas home and all their attitudes home and adopted new attitudes just for the duration of the seminar. Anyway, it was rather funny. Then that way I became acquainted with both institutions, with the Aspen Institute executive seminars and with the physics division. And we liked the physics division a lot and decided to come back. We decided Aspen was a wonderful, wonderful place. The physics division was a terrific place to visit, and we would come back. We didn't make it, though, the next 2 years. We were in Europe for both those summers, 65 and 66. But in 67, we came back. We visited briefly at the beginning of the summer, went to a summer study on Cape Cod, another secret, top secret, so on.
Think tank.
Summer study, not sponsored by the same organization. But then the latter part of the summer, we came back here and stayed for quite a while, and we enjoyed it immensely. We were assigned the Farney House across the street from the Quonset Hut Episcopal Church. And then we had it subsequently a number of times, several more summers. The following 3 or 4 summers, we stayed there as well.
Did you bump into many people from Aspen, or mostly just from the center?
No. We met Aspen people gradually, more and more, and got to know them and got to love the town.
Because you got a house early, or
in
later?
1971, we got a house, and it worked out this way. I won that Swedish prize in 1969. And had some cash.
69,
Had some cash. I spent some of it on the down payment for a house in Pasadena. Temporary, I thought. Actually, we stayed there for decades, but I thought it was a temporary respite while we built a real house Then I spent some more money on a down payment for land down near Montrose, or near Ridgeway. Beautiful land. Why I sold it, I cannot imagine. I mean, it was one of the stupidest things imaginable to sell that huge tract of Aspen at 9,000 feet. It was really stupid. But anyway, later on I did sell it. But at this point I had it, 1970. And, but in 71 we thought maybe we still had enough, maybe, for a down payment on something in Aspen. And we had a plan to buy a ratty old house from the Victorian period, I guess, or approximately the Victorian period, but very unprepossessing house, which had to be moved. And we were going to buy the lot across the street from the music parking lot and move that house onto it.
Oh, my.
Somebody subsequently did that, I believe. But when we came, when Margaret and I came to look at the house, we decided it just wasn't good enough for us. So we looked around for houses with Carol Ann Jacobson, who had worked at the Physics Center years before and was already a...
Oh, she was already involved
real
in the
estate.
Physics
She was
Center.
no, she had been. She had been a secretary at the Physics Center, but she was now a budding real estate agent.
She'd been the secretary, the staff. I didn't realize that.
Oh yeah, many people had been who subsequently were in other walks of life.
Other walks of life.
And Betsy Baldwin, who worked for the bank, and several others. But anyway, Carol Ann showed Margaret and me some houses, an A-frame on Francis, which we didn't like very much, and then the present house, which was at that time underwear pink inside and out, because the previous owner, Buzzy Robinson, W.W. Buzzy Robinson, had apparently been offered some free pink paint. And he hired some teenagers to daub it on the furniture and walls inside and on the outside of the house. And we looked at it, and I thought it was a very good house. And I said to Carol Ann, well, maybe this is it. Maybe we should try and buy this house. But she and Margaret were in agreement that this house was utterly unsuitable. Well,
But
why? I couldn't understand why. Finally, they explained it to me. It needed repainting.
With
and
this
they
pink paint.
couldn't believe that I would be willing to spring for repainting it.
Until the underwear paint showed up.
Yeah. Underwear pink paint. But in fact, I was willing. However, we decided that since I had made these down payments on various other things, we didn't really have enough for this house, and maybe we should share it with somebody. So back at Caltech, I asked the head of the chemistry division, who I believe is in Aspen right now, Jack Roberts. He said, well, he would love to with his family. He would love to share it with us, but he had a boat, and a boat is a hole in the water into which you pour money, and he couldn't possibly afford the house in Aspen in addition to the boat. So I asked, then what happened was Pussy Pepke visited Pasadena. And Colleen Brown, the wife of the president, gave a party for her and invited various people who had spent time in Aspen. And one of them was the wife of Harry Gray, another chemistry professor. Harry Gray had written a large part of his famous chemistry text in a house in Aspen that he had rented through the publisher. Well, Margaret sat next to Harry Gray's wife at the luncheon, and she brought up this question of sharing a house in Aspen. And the chemist's wife said, yes, we would be interested, but only if it's the house where we have always stayed. And Margaret said, well, that's too bad. But she said, pulling a picture out of her purse, don't you think this is a nice house? Whereupon Shirley said, but that is the house where we always stayed. So we bought it together. We bargained with Buzzy W.W. Robinson and finally bought the thing at a slightly lower price than he had asked and split the down payment and so on. And they still own 30% of it, actually. But they're silent partners now since they own a minority interest. And so ever since '71, we've had this
And
remarkable crumbling Victorian house, which is always photographed and painted and sketched and so on.
now the Physics Center, of course, figures in this, but suppose the Physics Center had not succeeded as it did so handsomely with George working so hard on it to stay. Suppose we'd been thrown off and the Physics Center hadn't survived.
Well, we
Would
all
you-
worked very hard on the negotiations, which took a quarter of a century.
Yes, exactly. And we're very
See, we were
curious about
spun
that.
off. I was the chairman of the board of the Physics Center when we were spun off by the Aspen Institute,
Okay.
or approximately then. Now, maybe I became chairman right afterwards. Of course, we didn't have a chairman.
That's right.
We had it, right.
We've
So
got it.
it was spun off, then there was another chairman, and then I took over as chairman. So, but I was involved anyway in the negotiations. We were spun off, I think, around 1968, 69, something like that.
Something like that.
And that's when we needed a board, and I joined the board and became chairman a little while later. That's right. But I was involved, and the negotiations took a good almost 25 years. Until we finally acquired the land,
which,
the
of
building,
course,
the land, the buildings, and so on.
We were but a straw in the midst of a maelstrom of negotiations.
Oh,
of the
all
whole
kinds of
community.
horrible things, yes, which we needn't go into here, as
Awful.
they say. But anyway,
But don't.
suppose you were asking, suppose that all of these had failed, these negotiations.
Yeah.
The Physics Center had somehow been terminated,
Yeah.
reabsorbed into the Aspen Institute, and abolished as the Physics Center.
Move to Baca.
Yes, well, or something. Would I still have come every summer to Aspen? I don't know the answer to that. I don't know. Because certainly one attraction was that I could work here, and we had so many friends from the Physics Center as well as our friends in town. I don't really know the answer to that.
Well, from many people came here and drew great inspiration from you. Did you in turn draw inspiration from them?
Oh, of course, yes. It was wonderful to be here with so many
they were
colleagues.
good fencing partners.
It's not so much inspiration as just, as you say, fencing, just arguing and discussing, and trying out ideas on people and having them try out ideas on you. And yes, it was very important. Very important.
And did you have a sense that, forgetting the real estate stuff that went on, that we would be as successful as we are? You must have thought that.
I thought it would work out. Yeah, I thought it would work out. I didn't know that we would expand to this size and so on. And I'm not sure that I was ever very happy with the idea of our getting very big. But the problem was a political one, in part, as Sterling Colgate emphasized perhaps several thousand times, that we had so many applications that to turn down almost all of them was to court a certain unpopularity. Whereas if we got a bit bigger, and then a bit bigger than that, and so on, we could at least accept a reasonable fraction of the applications. But it led to terrible overcrowding. And I didn't like that, and I was very strongly opposed to it. I just didn't think that it was worth it for this, just in order not to displease
Too many people in an office?
To bring to, yes, too many people in an office. But now it's two in an office, it's just fine. We fought very hard over all those years to negotiate, to find money to build, and so on and so forth. And finally, I think we've achieved a really, really pleasant situation.
We've asked almost everybody, and they are almost unanimous about the size. If it was much bigger, that's bad. If it's much smaller, that's also bad.
Well, if it's much smaller, it would be all right for the people who are here.
Yeah.
But the total happiness would be reduced
exactly.
because
For physics,
it would
let's
be
say.
a smaller number of it would be a smaller number of people.
But I'm surprised we currently accept a little more than half of the people that would like to come. That's pretty
That's
good.
okay. Yes, that's
terrific.
all right. And if we were much smaller and we accepted only a sixth or so, I think we'd become unpopular and it wouldn't work politically. But also, we would simply not be spreading that much happiness around.
Exactly.
We would be spreading less happiness.
Right. Well, another thing a lot of people have rued is that in the early days, because it was unstructured, there was interdisciplinary, whatever it is, the guy you're talking to isn't in your field. Now it's very narrowly channeled, and each group is apart from the other groups. Do you regret that structure, as it might be called?
Well, I don't think that it's really the case so much as the fact that we've gotten bigger. I mean, at that time, simply because we were small, there was an opportunity to talk not only to the handful of people in your own field, but also to people from other fields. Now it's so large that there are likely to be many people in your own field, and you have a huge meeting of those people.
Right.
And under those conditions, it's a little hard also to talk with people from very distant parts of physics. But I think it can still go on, probably still does go on to some extent. I doubt if it's been completely extinguished. It's just that the temptation to spend a lot of time with the rather large number of people from your own broad field
it's the easy way.
is very great. And you have a lot of organized activity now. I think much more organized activity than there used to be. I don't think we had workshops in the early days. We did, of course, have seminars, but then people might drop into the seminars from other fields and so on, which today would be less of a temptation because there'd be so many in your own field that you wouldn't have time left over. But I think there's nothing prohibiting interaction with people from very distant subjects.
If they're here.
If they're here. Well, they are here. No, they are here. For example, I look forward next week to talking a lot with Chuck Stevens. Chuck Stevens is a very interesting case because he's a biologist, he's a neurobiologist. He does his experimental work at the Salk Institute for 9 months or so of the year. Then he spends a month at the Santa Fe Institute doing theory, and then a month here at the Physics Center doing theory.
And at the Salk Institute, is he doing theory on biology or theory on
No, he's doing
complexity?
experiments in biology on the brain.
Oh, actually doing
observational experimental work on brains in La Jolla.
Our connection to the Santa Fe Institute's always been, it seems to me, very perfect. I mean, sort of a nice distance, but still an obvious connections.
Well, we had more connection. We had more Aspen people on the board in the past. George Stranahan was on the board, and he was a real link between the two. And Bob Maynard, but of course he's no longer here and also no longer there.
Right, is no longer.
He's mainly in the state of Washington. So we had a number of connections. John Powers is still on the board. And of course, there are some physicists like David Pines and me who are both on the board in Santa Fe and also associated with the Aspen Center for Physics.
So Santa Fe must feel a certain kinship to us.
Oh yes.
Also.
Oh yes.
Yeah, I mean, there's
no question about it.
Very helpful.
And also, we've had Santa Fe Institute parties here in Aspen occasionally. People have given them for us. So there's quite a number of links. Oh, then Ann Nitze, who lives here in the summer, is a trustee of the Santa Fe Institute.
She's a very smart lady.
She's done a lot for us.
Great. Well, is the center, do you feel, I mean, it seems like there's a definite head of steam and we're almost institutionalized. Do you think of things that we should do differently?
No, I think it's working just fine. I think that we can hope that some really great things will come out. And I don't know exactly how to promote that. I no longer work really in the field of elementary particle theory, as you know. I try to keep up with it a little bit, but I no longer work in that field. I now work in an interdisciplinary field connected with simplicity and complexity, which I call plectics.
Plectics.
So as to avoid a commitment either to simplicity or complexity.
But how about apoplectics? That happens, don't it?
That's different.
Different.
That's apoplectics, different. But anyway, I work on that sort of thing, and there has been some work here on that during the summer. But it could be that the Aspen Institute, that the Aspen Center for Physics, could move more in the direction of workshops on highly interdisciplinary subjects related to simplicity and complexity. There's no sense competing with the Santa Fe Institute, but to have an occasional meeting devoted to the kind of stuff we do there is not a bad idea. It has happened, I believe, a couple
Certainly
of
you
times.
must be able to bring...
It's happened a couple of times.
You must be able to bring from Santa Fe to the Aspen physics crew some stuff they haven't thought of.
But what's nice is that physicists are generally quite broad-minded about such things. Or at least often. I shouldn't say generally, but physicists are often broad-minded about such things. And I think the Aspen Center for Physics has been reasonably broad-minded about having people studying biological clocks, people studying meteorology, people studying various things that are on the edge of physics, on the edge of between physics and some other
And the
subject.
bio world has got a plethora of maybes over there in the whole biophysics world. There seems to be some talk about broadening from the classical triumvirate of things we did.
Well, there has been talk for a long time, and I think some of it has been implemented. I think we have actually had quite a number of seminars and little workshops on the edges of physics. Some of them have been on policy. In fact, I participated in and helped to organize one once on undergrounding power lines.
Really?
Which is connected very intimately with physics, of course, because based on the idea of supercooling.
Oh, big power lines.
Supercooling, yeah, transmission lines.
That was a local issue here we were involved in, was sparing the wires, so I got...
Oh, yes. Well, I'm very happy that the wires are buried near my house.
It was a very big deal.
Very good thing. It's so much better.
Yeah.
When electricity and telephone and so on were first introduced, the end of the 19th century, into many communities, there was an incredible profusion of ugly towers and wires and so on everywhere. Pictures of New York at that time were really just hideous. And when I was a child, there was still quite a lot, and I'm so glad that now there's much less, and here there's none.
When you travel in...
Princeton, New Jersey is another place that's buried
them all, yeah.
Power lines. It looks so much better.
We got it done because we found that the government was stealing money and hiding it. So we got it dragged out of the theft fund.
But the seminar we had was on undergrounding transmission lines using superconductivity and that sort of thing.
Totally impractical or might be practical?
No, it might be practical. There were arguments for and against, and it was sponsored in part by the Electric Power Research Institute, EPRI. But I just gave it as an example. I didn't want to go into the issue of undergrounding transmission lines. It's just that was an example of something we had here. Another thing
was that by any chance, as the Cold War faded, physics was desperately looking for something that would make it popularizable?
No, I think this was the other way around. All of these things came up while the so-called Cold War was still in progress. And as that situation ameliorated a little bit, these other things became all the more prominent. We had some environmental discussions here also, I believe. Well, of course, the undergrounding of transmission lines is an environmental question, but we had some other environmental questions. And I was interested a long, long time ago, and I still think it's a good idea. I was interested in finding some industrial applications of some subtle processes connected with elementary particle physics. For example, I have always believed that the K01, K02 problem, and I was really the first person to understand that situation back in 1953, 54, that the K01, K02 situation was something that might be exploited industrially someday, somehow. I don't know how. So what I thought of doing was to bring some really brilliant people here with inventive minds to think about possible applications, just to brainstorm about possible applications. And I had a whole list of people in mind, people like Louis Alvarez, John Wheeler, Dick Feynman, and so on, ingenious people, inventive people. And we just let them brainstorm about neutrinos, about K01, K02, about muons, about things in elementary particle physics that might have some interesting applications. Of course, there are already a few. But
I got treated with protons.
Right.
So there are a few.
There are some, but these would be new ones. And if they could find them and if they became successful, they would certainly promote the future of particle physics. It would be so much easier to get funding for particle physics.
There seems to be a difference of opinion about the popularity of physics. Let me ask a smaller
Physics as a
question.
whole?
Physics as a whole.
Yes.
Do you think the public lecture series here is helpful to the town-gown relationship, or is...
I think it's very good, and not only town and gown, because lots of people come from all over the world who are visitors to Aspen.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's very good. It may be that it needs to be promoted a little bit more, but it's a very good series, and I think it's extremely useful.
This winter we had probably the best ever. Jammed the wheeler right to the ears, totaled it out, and the talks were excellent. We had 4 different speakers, and they were all good.
Oh, that's great. That's very, very good. There's an impression that somehow physics is passé and biology is the thing. And of course, to some extent, that's true in that many, many, many applications, industrial, commercial applications of physics and military applications of physics have already become famous and important and so on. Whereas this is a time when applications of biology are on the upswing. Especially commercial applications, very much on the upswing.
My little field of solid-state physics has just left physics. It's now the computer business and is not considered physics.
Right. So there's therefore a cliche that's going around that says the age of biology, this coming century will be the century of biology. And I've heard very, very high officials, you can imagine which 2 very high officials of our government I'm referring to.
You mean Hillary and who else?
Saying this, and on each case I argued, saying, well, you can't look at it that way, but a much better way to look at the coming century, the way or the first few years of the coming century, which is really all we can talk about. Right. The better way to look at the first few years of the coming century is to say that it's the beginning of, that it is the epoch of the unity of the sciences. And that's what I firmly believe. That it is not that biology all by itself is important, but that biology has an enormous importance along with physics, chemistry, meteorology, astronomy, and so on, all of them interacting with one another in a very, very, very intimate way.
Unraveling the DNA strikes me as such a thing. It's a combination of...
And it was done in a physics lab.
It should have been.
It was.
And it's a mathematical, and it's a computational, and it's, by the way, biological.
It was an X-ray portrait.
Was it
that
really?
was deciphered, and it was done in the physics lab at Cambridge.
The
molecular biology started in a way in the physics lab at Cambridge, and it was deliberately cultivated by Bragg, the younger Bragg, who ran the lab.
Of Bragg Peak fame?
Well, yes, but that was the father and son. The father is more associated with the Peak, Sir William. This is Sir Lawrence, who is his son. But they worked together. They received the prize together. And Lawrence was then in charge of the Cavendish, and he promoted molecular biology and radio astronomy. He de-emphasized fundamental physics, unfortunately, but it was nice to have molecular biology and radio astronomy sort of starting there. So, but anyway, I firmly believe that this is the era of the unity of the sciences. Now, the person who has the most to gain at the moment from a concentration of funding on the biomedical sciences is Harold Varmus, that wonderful man who runs the National Institutes of Health. Well, he goes around making speeches saying, don't give me all the money.
Give some to the other guy.
Right, because science is a unified enterprise. And it's very important and more increasingly important to support science as a unified enterprise because the connections are getting stronger and stronger, not weaker and weaker.
I think of one thing, and that is, I don't want to use the word computers. That's a bad word, but
what's the matter with the word computer?
Well, because it instantly makes somebody think of Macintosh versus Unix, which is not what I'm talking about. But our ability to absorb staggering amounts of information. And
you mean there are computers that are not made by Apple?
That's right.
I didn't know that.
There are. They're made by those, soon, by the people who'll be defending themselves, I fear.
I don't know much about that, but I always thought all computers were made by Apple.
No, all apples are made by Apple.
Oh, I see. All right. They're the only ones I could possibly ever learn to use.
But our ability to just absorb staggering amounts of information and then squeeze it to death, and so one little tiny droplet, which is important, comes out, that would seem to me to be a unifying factor in science.
Right, and that's something that I'm very much concerned about. The squeezing of a little bit of knowledge and understanding and maybe a tiny, tiny drop of wisdom out of this enormous mess of stuff, a lot of which isn't true, most of which isn't relevant. And so
I was a little thrown together
and
the other day
at the Santa Fe Institute, that's not such an unorthodox thing to think about.
Yeah. Well, the unbelievable detector at Fermilab now, and the amount of stuff it processes to leak out one little clue, 0.01% accurate. That was unthinkable, wasn't it, 10 years ago? So that could be unifying the sciences.
Oh, lots of things are unifying the sciences. It's extraordinary to what extent they are being
Well,
unified.
where do we get this feeling that the public is now frowning on science more than it used to? Do you think it is? Maybe it is.
I don't know that frowning is the right word. I think that we are in danger of neglecting our scientific seed corn in the course of harvesting various crops from applications, engineering, technology, and so on. And I think also that there possibly are not enough Americans going into advanced work in science. Our graduate schools in science are full of wonderful, brilliant foreigners, many of whom stay here, but many of whom go home, which is fine for those countries. But it would be nice, I think, to have more Americans. But those Americans who do engage in advanced study of science, especially physics, often go to Wall Street after they've got their PhDs. In other words, some of them go to law school and business school to begin with. Others get PhDs in physics and then go to Wall Street.
And we've just heard that they get greedier and greedier, and after they've made their first million, they want their 10th million, and they're totally lost to it. But engineering's the same way. It's very filled with foreign students, and it's all the way
Which is
down
fine.
the whole
I'm not
level.
objecting to the foreign students in any way. I just think that there may be a difficulty if Americans shy away in huge numbers from science and technology studies.
But is it an
in favor of law and
is it maybe an
business.
anti-intellectual era? That's kind of what's the most scary.
Well, but we have, of course, to cope with fundamentalist crazies. I mean, that's
no, I don't mean
really,
extreme.
really, really.
But
but they are a really serious problem here and
they
elsewhere around the world. And I've tried to fight in the state of New Mexico, where I live, for including in the state curriculum biological evolution and the age of the Earth and other very important facts, incontrovertible facts about science.
Boom.
Calling them theories, while it's correct, is a bad thing to do in that company because they believe that theory means something that's probably not true.
Evil, yes.
Whereas these things are certainly true.
My God.
Anyway, it's very bad. Kansas just made the headlines yesterday for eliminating these things from the curriculum, but they're not in the curriculum in New Mexico. What we were arguing for was adopting the national science standards prepared by the National Academy of Sciences. They're not that great, but they're surely a lot better than nothing. And the State Board of Education, influenced by a creationist member appointed by our present governor, our present Republican governor, voted down adopting these national science standards for the state of New Mexico. Now, New Mexico has an unbelievable amount to gain from serious scientific education because it's a rather poor state, one of the poorest, in fact, and but has great hope for the future through science and technology because of the national laboratories, Intel's plant, and many other technological marvels that are within the boundaries of the state, and scientific marvels like the Very Large Array and other telescopes and so on and so forth.
Wonderful,
but the state of New Mexico, in its wisdom, has dispensed with the national science standard.
Could it be that if we try to derive an average, it's a mistake? It's sort of like the no lots and the no nots, separating further and further apart. That's what I think is happening. I find many people are very well read and they write well and they're very
Oh, but those fundamentalist crazies are not the only crazies. Here in Aspen and in Santa Fe and in Los Angeles, near where I used to live, there are enormous numbers of New Age superstitious creeps.
Sure.
who are maybe not as dangerous as fundamentalists,
Well,
but they're just as crazy.
They seek you out because you're a worthy opponent. They'll get some fun out of it.
I don't know.
But even forgetting the crazies, just taking a little more.
But there's so
than
many
middle.
of them, of many
You mean
different
like
kinds.
10%?
Huge number.
Really?
Oh, yes.
Ugh.
Oh, yes. Oh, and then the partially crazies. That is, the people who are relatively normal, but nevertheless believe a few crazy conspiracy theories or a few crazy anti-scientific
The
things.
contrails are poisoning us deliberately.
So
That
I
was
don't
the
know.
one that was remarkable. We just went through that.
I don't know what it is.
But the city council had to pass judgment on
There's
it.
such a lot of it. And I, as a very strong environmentalist, am often embarrassed by the kook environmentalists
That's right.
who concentrate on non-issues of various kinds, when the planet is in many respects going to hell. They don't care about that. They care about some fictitious dangers from something or other in food. It's very upsetting.
Have you ever dropped...
My reaction to those environmentalists is, get off my side!
You've got to muzzle your fool, so to speak. Have you popped into the Center for Global Change? John Katzenberg's thing. It's sort of it's modeled slightly after the Physics Center.
I know about it. I haven't been there.
And they're awfully nice people.
But
and
I'm
they're a
very
lot
interested,
savvier.
of course, in global change.
Well, you
And,
might stop in and say hi because they're
It
very
shouldn't be
able.
called the Center for Global Change. They're not in favor of global change. It should be called Center for the Study of Global
Oh,
Change.
maybe it is. It's
No, I don't think
possible.
so. I think maybe you're right about the name.
But we entertain them every year, and we find them very interesting.
No,
people.
it's very
and
important.
they're not loonies at all.
No, it's very important.
There are people who are in Brazil. Well, one guy that was interesting. He was interested in mosquitoes, which they go with satellite dishes to look at. But he himself bears his arm and gets bitten 4 times a day in order to study the difference, because it's the only thing that really works, he says, studying these mosquitoes. So he's sort of an earthy character, and then there's eggheads, and it's an interesting bunch
No,
of
it
people.
sounds great. It's a wonderful community. It's just a marvelous community.
Isn't that?
Even though they've been ruining it for decades and decades and
haven't.
decades, it's still great.
Yeah, together we enjoy it.
And
just as
Santa
much as
Fe
you.
has been ruined for decades also, but it's still a very wonderful place. Very wonderful place.
It is. It is. Well, I think we haven't followed our orders here at all, but we've had a fine time.
Great.
It's been wonderful, Mark.
Very
Thank
nice
you so
talking
much.
with you, Nick.